Families who have been left in the dark for more than 7 years will soon be able to find out more about how their loved ones died. The long-running public inquiry into the use of imported contaminated blood by the NHS in Scotland is to report its findings on March the 25th. The inquiry has been looking into how haemophiliacs and others were infected by blood products during the 1970s and 80s, contracting hepatitis C and HIV. Well, Dan Farthing-Sykes at Haemophilia Scotland joins us now. Do you welcome this?
Well, as you said in the introduction there, it's been such a long time coming that I suppose the only thing we can do is welcome that finally we're at the point where we've got an inquiry coming, fortunately, just before the general election. This is an issue that's was a decade old before the Scottish Parliament even begun, and there's been inquiries and investigations and all the way through the 4 parliaments we've had since then, before we even got to this inquiry. So the people who've been affected have been extremely patient, and it's very difficult to be patient for even another month. But we're very pleased that eventually there will be a report, and we will finally hopefully have some answers to some of the questions that have been dogging the community for years. Yeah,
it has been 7 years. But so what questions do you hope will be answered by it?
Well, in many ways, it's a recognition of what many people in the community have felt has been the case all along. We want to know if there were missed opportunities. Obviously, at every stage along the process, every time somebody took an injection of a blood product made from contaminated donor pools, they're exposed to a risk. And in the cases of hepatitis C, they're almost guaranteed to be given hepatitis C. So we'll want to know if there are any points anywhere along the story where less people could have been infected or infections could have been avoided.
If that is found, if Lord Penrose finds that there were places where that could have been avoided, what are the implications of that, particularly for compensation?
Well, that's exactly right. We know now that even with the compensation, well, I shouldn't call it compensation really, there are some support payments currently in place, but we know that they're inadequate for the needs of people who are affected. A report came out only yesterday which said that there are people in all categories of support who are living in poverty. And we think it's not acceptable for when people have been infected with bloodborne viruses as a result of treatment on the NHS, that they should be left with poor health and living in poverty.
I think there is a legal action at the moment, isn't there, with 3 men challenging the terms of the compensation thus far?
That's right. The current system is based on 5 different trusts with different entry criteria, meaning that people, depending on their circumstances and which viruses they've been infected with, are entitled to different levels of support. I don't know the details of the legal challenge, obviously, but my understanding is that it's those inherent unfairnesses that they're questioning, and seeing if there's a discrimination at work.
So how many people altogether will be affected by the issues that Lord Penrose looked at?
Well, obviously the numbers for people with bleeding disorders like haemophilia are much better known. We think around 550 people were exposed to hepatitis C, and somewhere just under 100 people with HIV. Those figures, especially for the hepatitis, are much larger for the people who've had a blood transfusion. So people who had a baby and maybe had a blood transfusion in the 70s and 80s. Quite a few of those may have gone on to being infected. And if we look at the current support arrangements, it's about the same again who are entitled to support under the current rules for those schemes. So it's not enormous numbers. That it should be possible for the budgets to stretch to the point where a relatively small number of people who have been let down by the state are able to be supported properly.
Okay, Dan Farthing-Sykes from Haemophilia Scotland, thanks very much.